Thank you for listening to the Advertising Podcast. I'm Skip Wilson, and I've got a special guest, Lisa Bowman, here with us. And we are going to take a look at a campaign that was not necessarily bad, but could have been a lot better.
Breaking down advertisements, improving on them, redefining ad space. This is the Advertising Podcast.
All right. So, Lisa, thank you for being on. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Skip, thanks so much for having me. I am Lisa Bowman. I have been what I refer to as a marketing and a brandvangelist for the last 20 years. So as a marketing, I build for brands, and as a brandvangelist, I try and convert lookers to buyers. I've worked for Fortune 50 companies like UPS. I've worked in the nonprofit sector for United Way, and I am fortunate enough to have the luxury of running my own company called Marketing Mojo. So I get to use my skills and work for a variety of businesses in different sectors.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, that's great. Yeah. Thank you for being on here. So today we're going to take a look at a campaign that's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse for sure, in terms of at least the content itself. But you want to tease this out a little bit, or before I play the commercial?
Yeah, I think I deliberately tried to find something that might make you squirm in your seat. We'll see if I was successful or not. But I ran across a spot that CVS is doing, talking about women's health care, and this is under their Health Happens Here campaign that they're running. And there was something that appeared to me as an obvious miss. So don't know how often, I know you've got daughters and a wife, don't know how often you've walked down that aisle, but presumably you have once or twice. Absolutely. So I think we're going to talk about that today.
All right. That sounds good. Well, with that, I'll switch over here and we'll take a look at the commercial anyway.
Here is CVS Health.
Here, we'll never be told our concerns are all in our head.
Here, we don't think we should pay more than men for the same thing.
Or pay taxes for period products.
Here, we can ask tough questions, day or night.
And here, we're actually heard.
And because of that, we can focus on getting healthier together.
Together.
Here, healthier happens together. CVS Health.
My initial thoughts of that, I mean, it's a well-produced commercial and everything else. I mean, from a production value, I think it's solid. But let's make it better, right? How can we make that even better?
Yeah, I agree with you. From a production value perspective, super solid. I love the fact that it's inclusive. I don't know if you caught it, but towards the end, there was a woman who I believe was actually doing sign language, right? So she was doing the here. So I think it's inclusive. I think it had great representation in it from a diversity perspective. The miss that I saw, Skip, and this is something that jumped out at me the first time that I saw it. And I remember actually calling it out to my husband. It came on, we were watching TV, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's this great opportunity that they didn't capitalize on. But I think when they talk about healthier happens together, right? What they missed was healthy her. Because that's really what this piece of the campaign is about physical and mental well-being and ensuring that women are heard and that their products are appropriately priced, that they're not paying pink tax.
Right.
And so, I love the notion of the campaign about this is the location where healthier happens. But I think the miss was that they buried the her in the word here, and it really gets lost. I would have played up the healthy her. Because what they're really talking about is this is where you go, right? To make sure that your health concerns are heard, that they're not dismissed, to find the health products that you need or the personal care products that you need as a woman. And so I think this is about healthier her being holistic rather than just it happening here. And so that to me was the obvious miss. And I remember kind of jumping off the couch, pointing at the TV and saying to my husband, oh my gosh, these folks should have hired me. Like, here's this obvious miss. It's right. About healthy her, not here with the her buried in it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, plus, a lot of those issues, and this is my ignorance, right? But like, I've never heard of pink tax. I didn't even know that was a thing. That sounds crazy. I don't know why. I don't know what the rationale for tax for that. I don't know what the rationale for for that tax is. But I mean, a lot of those. Now, granted, I'm not the target audience for this, right? But
Sure.
so that's fair enough. But
Yeah, to me, the issue is that when you talk about pink tax and period products, right?
yeah,
And you just let me know if I'm going to make you squirm in your seat with the conversation. But
yeah,
when you talk about those things, there are things that every woman needs, right? It's a healthcare issue. So it's not a discretionary purchase.
yeah,
And quite frankly, there are issues not only in this country, but there's issues globally with people that live below the poverty line being able to afford to buy those products. They're not subsidized, they're not covered by food stamps. And candidly, like they're expensive. If you think about diapers, right? Diapers are a fundamental need for a baby. You've
right.
got girls, they were babies at one point. Diapers are really expensive.
Yep.
Period products are really expensive too.
Yeah.
There's something that's completely disposable, they're not reusable. And so you have to have them. But if you're struggling to meet your basic needs, having the discretionary income to pay for those things may be a challenge, and then having to pay tax on top of that. Tax, again, don't know what the tax ranges are, but let's say the average state tax rate in any given state might be 6%.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, compare that to what we talk about with mortgage rates. Mortgage rates are 7% right now. That's
Right.
the difference between somebody being able to purchase or not purchase a home. Right. That 6 or 7 or 8%, if you're in New York, may be the same thing. That may be the tipping point for somebody unable to afford those products and left with a significant issue.
The Boston Tea Party was started, by the way, over a 3% tea tax. So there you
Yeah. So
3%, we take over a harbor like a couple hundred years ago.
Exactly. So imagine what would happen if we all decided to rebel against the pink tax. I don't know what we're taking over, but something for sure.
Right.
But yeah, I think that and CVS, to their point, they do talk about the fact that they are paying the tax for this for a promotional period in states where they can, but there's only a small handful of states that actually legally will allow them to do that. So, I think it's a really interesting campaign. I think it's a good campaign. There's a lot of discussion out there by women about not being seen, not being heard, being told that things are in their head. And I think it's a gender specific issue. I don't think that applies as much to men,
Sure.
But I think CVS is absolutely right to capitalize on this. I presume that demographically, the bulk of their customers are probably women.
Yeah.
Right? Women tend to be the primary shoppers, the primary caregivers, things like that. So I think it's a really appropriate and important campaign. Like I said, I just think there was a miss without making the whole healthy her thing the center of this.
Absolutely. Well, and it is, it's one of those things where if done poorly, like if executed poorly, any type of campaign like this could potentially cause a big negative backlash, right? Like if they don't follow through with their promises, like in other words, if they don't back up the fact that, if it's an all male staff or something like that, I mean, they raise the potential to, to bring backlash by not executing. But if they execute this type of campaign, if they execute it internally, I mean, from like an operation standpoint. But something you said is interesting because, the tax, they in the commercial, they tout the fact that they pay the tax, but they can't do that legally in a lot of locations. And so I think a better spin on that, an almost more empathetic spin on that, would have been something you'd mentioned actually prior to this call, but like reducing, if they had just said, we're going to reduce our price by such percent so that everyone's taxes are covered. I mean, because I think that would have been, more impactful literally, but also more meaningful in the commercial.
I agree. Now, I didn't catch in the commercial, as we're dissecting it, that they actually said that in the commercial. I know we had both found that information online. I didn't catch where they promoted that in the commercial, but to your point, I think it would have been awesome if in the commercial they announced that, and again, in some states, you can't legally cover the tax, but what if they announced that, you know what, we are reducing the price by the amount of state tax charged in every state for a duration of whatever, October through the end of the year, so that you pay the actual price for the product. The other thing I would have loved to have seen them done with this was to promote the fact that they were potentially making a contribution from the sale of female products to organizations like the Pad Project or Period that provide items to women that are struggling to afford them.
For sure.
You know, I would have loved to have seen some PR around that and to really make this a holistic campaign that's centered around that issue.
Almost even, I think, doing the Tom Shoes type model, which I know isn't great for, I know Tom Shoes now is getting some backlash because free shoes aren't necessarily great, but that same type of concept though, I think would be great, where like if, you know, like a 1-to-1 match, and maybe they can't do this from a cost standpoint, but at least theoretically a 1-to-1 match for everything you buy, you know, a donation is made to those less fortunate areas. Where some of these products aren't available at all, or if they are available, are very high cost. That type of thing, I think, could really take this from just a commercial to being truly like a part of a movement and winning some great brand loyalty.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if they had taken this, to your point, beyond a commercial into a full-on campaign with those other components embedded, I can tell you that as a female consumer, it probably would have pulled me to CVS over, you know, a Walgreens or the other competitors, because I would have said, you know what, it resonates with me. They're speaking to me. They care about me. They care about issues that are important to women. And I think that's what they were trying to do in the spot. But I think by not making it a bigger campaign, they fell just a little bit short on it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There's nothing worse than like half taking a stand, right? Or making it look like you're taking a stand without actually doing some things to back it up. You know, it almost reminds me of like the Dove campaign. I don't know if you remember the Dove campaign. I mean, it was like a decade ago, I think like 10 years ago, but they did this campaign about body image issues, which was a big thing at the time. And really, I mean, it was a series of commercials and a series of outline, and then they changed their whole product line to be focused on being more inclusive of their female representation in their ads and everything else. And that still is a part of Dove stuff today. But I think that one is an example of where it's not just a commercial. It truly was. It changed like the operations of the company. And so.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that campaign. And one thing that I love about Dove is because their products are skincare products as opposed to cosmetic products per se.
Right.
They've even switched along the way to showing people, women, natural state, right? They're not made up. They're not glammed. They're talking about skin, and this is my skin with Dove. And we don't see that very often. And so I love and respect that campaign. I think it was brilliant. You know, coming back to the CVS campaign for a second, while I appreciate the fact that it was all female, I would have liked to have seen a little additional diversity in there. Because female is not just I'm biologically born female, right? That's a whole rabbit hole we could go down. But I would have liked to have seen maybe a man in there, you know, talking about something or engaging with the fact that, like you said, you have daughters, you visited that aisle. I have dispatched my husband to that aisle on behalf of myself and my stepdaughter. So, you know, there is a men's thing there too. And to your point, you'd never heard of the pink tax, right?
Yeah.
So it would have been great to have a male POV in there saying like, hey, wait a minute. You know, I never realized. And one thing they showed in there, they showed razors. Razors in general are really expensive, but there's a whole marketing thing around razors. I don't buy my own razors. I use my husband's. Like, why should I don't care that my handle is pink. My legs are fundamentally shaped the same way his legs are. But to charge more for women's razors, women's products that are a basic product, it's the same as I can't take my shirts to the cleaners and have them done for 99 cents or $1.25 or whatever the going rate is, because I'm told that my shirts are blouses and they don't fit on the standard press that's configured for a man's shirt. So they have to be hand pressed. It's more expensive.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yep.
no, that's crazy. I mean, I would imagine almost everything in CVS world, almost everything is segmented by traditional gender in some way, where like if you're looking at toothbrushes, you've got almost like women's toothbrushes that are like pink and frou-frou and kind of, it's like, which is, the mouth's the same, right, for everybody. So it's like, so it is crazy. And then razors, actually, that this is so I often am the one going to the grocery store, and so I'm often the one buying not only feminine products but also things, like razors. And it is now my wife does have the pink handles and stuff, but I don't know why her razors cost $13-14 and my disposable razors cost like $3.
Right, it's crazy.
And so, that's so I'm glad they touched on that. I would be curious I wonder how they're like, from an operational standpoint. I just wonder how well the commercial matches up. How well the commercial matches up with like in-store operations. Cause like, I don't know how much control they would have over that. And so bringing up an issue, but then doing nothing about it is like almost worse, I think.
Yeah, I mean, again, to me, this is a subsegment of an ad campaign, right? So it started out as health happens here is the overarching campaign message. We drill down into this health happens her here thing.
Right.
But then what's the execution that stands behind it? Or is it just messaging? Because to the points that we've raised, if it's just messaging, okay, points for that, but it falls short of being bigger and more impactful by not being a standalone campaign. And the other thing that was intriguing to me is the timing for when this was launched. I think this got launched in October. Yet we have International Women's Day that happens in March.
Right.
October's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Maybe it had something to do with that. I don't know, but there was no discussion of that in the commercial. And they certainly don't do, breast cancer screenings or anything at CVS. So the timing to me is curious as well.
Well, that to me it speaks almost more to the idea of because any sort of CPG or like consumer product good company, their big ad spend is always fourth quarter, like October through December. So that again, I think speaks to the idea that this was just a piece of their standard marketing campaign and just messaging, rather than putting thought through, wait, which month would this actually make the most sense for? Like, because it probably was their standard fourth quarter launch of all of their campaigns, right? And so it was that might very well be the timing of it. And if so, that again, I think then you're just virtue signaling, right? Because then you're just saying like, hey, these are problems. Now come shop at our store.
Exactly. And so I think that, again, missed opportunity here, right? Launch it during International Women's Day, make that contribution, whether it's domestic or international. I know that CVS has got to have a foundation or some philanthropic arm. Bring your partners to the table, right? Bring the feminine products companies to the table on this, make it a bigger campaign. And again, I think you really score points, and it's not just virtual signaling. It becomes real, it becomes impactful, and then it gives you content to talk about. That we ran this campaign, and here's the results. We were able to provide, X amount of supplies to these organizations. And when you do that, here's what that means. It means that a young girl, for example, may not skip school because she's having her period and doesn't have the right products, and she's not going to go to school in that scenario. It means that somebody who's experiencing homelessness maybe doesn't have to deal with the potential embarrassment of not being able to address that scenario.
Right.
It's when I worked in the nonprofit space, one of the issues that we addressed was that in some developing countries, as girls enter puberty, they're really reluctant to go to school because of the restroom facilities, right? Sometimes they're just not appropriate for young girls at that age. They may be more outside or not appropriate. And when that comes into play, girls will stay home from school. And therefore, they're missing out on a chance to get educated or falling behind in their education. And there's so much data out there about what happens if you actually educate and empower women, right? And how much financial support they can provide to their family. It's not something that we deal with as much here in the US, but in developing countries, in Africa and India, I mean, it's a really big issue. And so again, I just look at the sort of lost opportunity that was here to do something more impactful and make a bigger bang with this. And I didn't see any PR around this either. I had to dig to find this once I saw the spot.
Right.
But why are we not doing PR? Why are we not having somebody from CVS talking about the pink tax and advocating? They do talk in their content about the fact that they're trying to eradicate the pink tax. Use this as a jumping off point to talk about your advocacy and legislative efforts to try and make that happen. And again, nothing.
Well, the reason I don't think you see any PR beyond the commercial itself is because I think I don't know that they have built out. I don't know that they're actually doing anything, right? Like to get the PR, you have to actually take like the step. You have to actually be reducing prices on those products or actually doing those things. And really, but I think whatever amount of money they're putting into this from a paid ad standpoint, if they had put that into subsidizing these feminine products for people on EBT, something like, hey, look, if you pay with EBT, then these products are no charge for you in our stores. To your point, I'm sure there's a CVS Foundation. I'm sure and if there's not, that's something that could easily be created, right? I mean, like that. We ask our partner agencies and clients for donations for stuff that, every year. And so, so it's, that's something very easy for businesses to execute. Then you take it out of a campaign or out of a commercial world and turn it into either truly a campaign or even better, truly like a part of really branding yourself and part of a movement. Because having this be a subset of the Health Happens Here standpoint is a missed opportunity, because that really could be a movement to a demographic that's got to be 70-80% of their customer base, probably. I would imagine. It seems like women 25-54 is like always what any CPG or consumer goods or grocery type store, that's always their demo. So that's
and just anecdotally, when I'm in CVS, I mean, I tend to see more women than men.
Yeah.
You raised the issue of branding, so we should dig into that just a little bit, because one of the things that I love as a branding expert and as a consumer is when companies play with their logos to specify that they're doing something for a cause. Right. And so CVS's logo is that sort of red stylized heart. It almost reminds me of a Lego. Because it's got sort of those pieces to it. And the CVS branding people are probably going to light up my LinkedIn when we post this episode. But all of that being said, I would have loved to have seen them turn the heart pink for this campaign, or do something similar to signify that, this is the place for women. And so, I think there's two schools of thought on this, and I'd love your POV, but some people really take the approach that brand is sacrosanct and you don't touch it. And then other people say that, our brand is representative of who we are and our values and our culture. And therefore there are certain times when we will change it to reflect that.
Yeah, no, I would agree with more of that standpoint. I mean, it's, a brand is, from a visual standpoint, the visual aspect of a brand, in my opinion, should represent what the company stands for. But that sometimes changes. Yeah, I mean, you don't what your core values don't change, but like sometimes you're focused on one particular issue or one particular topic, and then I'm all for changing the brand to represent that. I think that's awesome. I mean, I mean, if you'll do it for like Halloween or Christmas or those types, or you do it if you see it for holidays all the time, you should definitely be doing it for causes as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest demonstration that I see of it, candidly, is during Pride Month. Everybody changes their brand to some rainbow iteration, but we don't do it for other things. And so I remember in a former role, one of the things that I was looking at was, should we change our brand for specific occasions? And it wasn't about turning it orange for Halloween, because that was kind of a non-issue to me and a little too commercial, but Veterans Day, right? We did a lot of support for veterans. Like, should our brand become camo for Veterans Day? It's a one-day change that acknowledges something that is important to us and we support.
Right.
I personally don't see the downside, but I know that I have peers that are brand experts that shudder at the thought of that, right? And oh my gosh, my brand, we don't change it. So yeah, but I think that's, another area, candidly, that again, if we took this from a single spot to a larger campaign and an impact-driven campaign, that's one of the other things that if I were heading this up, I would have explored.
Absolutely. Well, and even, I mean, CVS logo being red, I mean, this is somewhat uncomfortable for me to think about or talk about, but I mean, red and these pink products and things, I mean, they go hand in hand, right? I mean, red's part of it.
Yeah,
so
it is.
And so I think you could even be on the nose with that in some way. I mean, playing with it in a way that would be brand safe, but,
how much pushback do you think we're going to get from the CVS folks after we air this?
Well, I mean, really, it's not. I mean, I think overall, I think what they're doing is great. I mean, I think that's fine. Address the issue. It's more like there's a bigger opportunity to be had there. I mean, I don't know that commercial is going to win brand loyalty as much as using a long form change to maybe the way you operate your business, bringing in outside help, like being able to support other charities, and those things are taking a percentage of your profit. And then I think there's an opportunity to truly own the concept of like, we're a brand that cares about women. And I think that their commercial didn't do that. So I don't know. I don't think there's no pushback. What they did was fine. It's just, there's more that could be.
No, I agree. Like we talked about, I think production was solid, but I think that there were a couple of things that they missed that could have made this so much more than what it was. And it's an unfortunate miss, because I think this really had potential that it didn't live up to.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And eventually someone's going to solve that problem. And if you're CVS, what you don't want is Walgreens to be it, right? You don't want Walgreens to be like, oh, well, that should be us. We'll make ourselves the store for, the store that really truly focuses on gender equality. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to raise the issues, try to fix the issues also, at least, even if you can't do it operationally. I mean, maybe they can't reduce the price of razors, for example, forever, because they're not the manufacturers. They're not, they're buying it from someone else, but they can definitely do it for a short window, and they should be telling people about it and why, and more importantly, why they're doing it.
I agree. And I think it's not even for some of let's face it, like, razors are optional. Yes, right. It's nice to have smooth legs, but you know what? If I couldn't afford a razor, I'd figure that out. Yeah. But the period products, like, not optional. So to me, that's sort of the center of where this missed opportunity is, particularly if you're going to talk about the fact, as they did in some of their surrounding content, that they are advocating for the eradication of the pink tax. Own it, step into it, live it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And take real action inside your own store to reduce that impact for the consumer.
Exactly.
So yeah, very good. Thank you. So yeah, so CVS, if anyone from CVS is listening, you did good raising the issue. Now let's Now solve it, and you can really create a brand for you. You can really boost your brand and brand loyalty.
And by the way, if you need help, Skip and I are both available to lean in on that one.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Advertising Podcast, the podcast where we fix broken ads. Please remember that while marketing is an art, advertising is a science, and we at Draft Advertising Technology have the tools and tricks to help you treat it that way. For a bunch of early access to free tools, go to draftadtech.com. That's draftadtech.com. And of course, please like, subscribe, share, and if you leave us a review, just include your name or even the name of your company, and we'll mention you on air.